I'm resident of Colorado for YouTube, Joel Sains, and no, I have no sanity left. This is Tom Hotz, Vickie Rae, Keith Chawgo. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I got it right.
He deserves no respect. Don't worry about it.
Oh my God. We're here to talk Dark Shadows 1995. So Barnabas and Julia escape 1970 parallel time to come to the Colorwood of the future. And it ain't looking good at all. The house is a wreck, and it looks like a hurricane at the house, but don't worry, it's just a spirit. So this is only 9 episodes long. I call this the 9 episodes of terror. So ladies first, Vickie, when did you first watch the 1995, and what did you think of the ghost of, technically it's Judah Zachary?
Judah Zachary. Well, first time I saw it was probably like, I want to say around the 80s or so, but I really didn't get in depth with this story till Keith started our Dark Shadows podcast on the Literary License podcast. That's when we got really in depth into this one. And we, this lasted about 2 weeks, and we had, who did we have? Jim Storm was playing
Gerard.
Yeah, Gerard. I mean, for some reason, I went to the Dream Curse all of a sudden. I think I'm still got PTSD from the Dream Curse. But he was a great ghost. I mean, well, he was like Quentin a little bit. You know, he didn't have much to say. I mean, the dialogue was sadly lacking. There was not much going on except for the glares and the stares. But I mean, I really enjoyed it. I guess it had its purpose. I think something else was going on. Wasn't there some other dynamic going on where they did this before they jumped back to 1970? I'm trying to remember.
I think they were, most of the writers were jumping ship at this time, weren't they?
Well, this is towards the end,
like
kind of, sort of.
Joe Caldwell.
And Dan Curtis was like, he wanted to go into features, so he kind of lost interest at this point.
Well, he did. He had done both of his movies at this point, had he not?
Yeah, Dark Shadows movie was out by that time.
Yeah.
Well,
both
the first movie had been done. The first movie had been done, and by the way, everybody, this is Tom Diamond, aka Tom Hotz, who Jewel forgot to mention me. I happen to be somewhere around, but it's good to see all of you. And this is the first time we've all been together, Vickie and Keith and I, since those halcyon days when
it's been about 3 years now. 3 years now.
Yeah.
Has it been since we started all that? We hung in for the long haul. We were doing it for like 4 years. We did every episode. Well, we did blocks. We got smart. We did blocks. So
yeah, we did blocks, and then we were coming up to the end of the season, and we thought, okay, we can stop it. And then of course, things happened in between. You know, Tom had some hospital appointments to take care of, and we kind of waited, and then
COVID.
Well,
COVID
actually
was really good for the podcasting business, though. Our ratings went through the roof during COVID.
We got Laura Parker. We got them all.
Yeah, we got David Selby. We got the whole shebang, didn't we? Yeah.
But with the 1995 storyline, I mean, it's interesting. But I always find this is like, I kind of considered this kind of like, I enjoyed it, but at the same time, because it didn't go on too long, sometimes their storylines
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Yeah. So normally they would go on, and it's like, you could tell where there's a lot of filler and not a lot of action. There's at least a lot of action. But there's, I don't know. I guess I kind of would have liked a little bit of what they thought 1995 would look like, because their 1995 looked like 1960s.
It was kind of like Land of the Lost, wasn't it, there for a while? I mean, seriously, it didn't. But I mean, and you had Julia screaming and just screaming for the whole 9 or 10 episodes. And then you have Barnabas every time a cop. You ever notice Barnabas every time a cop shows up? Not now.
That was Don Bradfree that killed the guy.
It's like he just totally schemes on the police.
It was Don Crabtree that played the guy that Barnabas killed. But I'll tell you what I enjoyed about it, because it was only 2 weeks. So it's not like we have to run and memorize a ton of stuff like we used to have to do, in terms of the show. But Nancy Barrett, in my view, was one of the she stole the entire show. Nancy Barrett was absolutely.
She did get the shine in this. She did.
The best. She was scary. I mean, she was really.
It was the makeup, though. I mean, the close-ups of the makeup and the lack of special effects. I mean, that was kind of brutal back in the day, though. You know, because I mean, the close-ups. And I mean, you see every pore on your face. I mean, you just don't see that in soap operas now. I don't remember really seeing it back then, actually, but I guess that's just the way it was. Like for Young and the Restless, or As the World Turns, and Search for Tomorrow, Edge of Night, all of that stuff.
I mean, Kate Jackson as a ghost was interesting.
Right.
So
Daphne, was it Daphne Harridge? Was that? Yeah.
Yeah, Daphne.
Yeah. Every time I see her, I just think of Sabrina from Charlie's Angels.
Sabrina,
the smart one.
Sabrina,
the smart one from Charlie's Angels. No, Scarecrow, Mrs. King. I loved that show. I used to watch that all the time. We're showing our age, but.
Tom, what did you think of Jim Storm here as a ghost? He was really great.
Well, that sneer of his is kind of iconic, because he would try and scare her. I thought Carolyn was a lot scarier, quite frankly, than he was.
He told us when we were interviewing him that one time. I don't know if you were there for that. I think we interviewed him 2 or 3 times, but he told us that they had him and Selby had something going about who did the best sneering and the best scowling. At least I believe that's what the both of them told us at one time.
Well, I think
it's quite interesting that the house isn't ruined, but the Stairway to Time was still intact. So that was quite good.
Well, it was kind of intact, wasn't it? I guess.
enough of them to go back to the present, or 1970s the present.
Yeah.
It was kind of neat how they did that, though.
Cy Tomlinson did a great job, I think, in terms of doing the sets for the. I mean, they just took a whole bunch of plywood and threw it over the sets, and used the spider web stuff, and.
Does this precede Rose Cottage, or is Rose Cottage after? It precedes Rose Cottage.
Cottage is after. Rose Cottage is after Parallel. They mentioned it. They mentioned Rose Cottage,
right?
Because Carolyn is killed. She was writing down all the clues that they'd have to look at, and Rose Cottage was one of them. Plus, the night I sang my song, and whatever the heck she was writing when she was. But I just thought that Jim Storm, and he actually looked like he had some kind of thing over his lip that made the sneer look even more menacing. I don't know whether the makeup people did that on him, but
we can text him and ask real quick. We still got his number.
I don't know.
Your lip
I know they'll talk to us after that. But I mean, he's a really nice guy, by the way, and
he's very nice. He's a very lovely person. He is very nice.
Yeah, and he married Valerie Pronto Storm, who was a Dark Shadows fan and a retired physician herself, and they go gallivanting, or he's getting his gigs, and I think that
keeps him busy. It looks like.
Absolutely, Thayer David, I thought was kind of poignant, and I thought
he's
that
always anything. Just look at his career. I mean, but this one. I don't know. I was kind of happier when he was. Oh God, what was he? What was his name? The glasses, the hair.
The werewolf storyline.
Oh God, the gypsy storyline.
Sophie?
Oh, Sandor.
Yeah, Sandor.
Sandor.
But what was he? He
What's
was
up,
the.
Faye?
He was Magda's husband.
Yeah.
He was Magda's husband.
That
in
was really
1997.
strong, but they kind of chipped out on him here a little bit because they didn't really give him a heavy hitting script like he's got the scenes, you know, and the lines, but he wasn't. They didn't bring him in as strong in these 9 or 10 episodes like he normally does. I don't know. You guys might think differently.
Yeah, I mean,
but it was a short storyline. It was filler for something.
But another thing is the sad thing about it being filler is that you have other storylines that kind of bookend this, that kind of some of them kind of overstay their welcome, and you got this one that's very, very interesting, and it's about this, you know, the curse and all this other stuff, and then no curse. It's like it never happened. It's like it felt
abruptly
like
end
Bobby
once they went
Ewing
back upstairs.
coming out of the shower after a season of Dallas missing. It kind of had that kind of feeling to it.
What was that? Knots Landing was all a dream.
No, it was Dallas. It was Dallas.
Was it Dallas? I thought no, it was Victoria Principal. Gary Ewing wasn't dead. I thought it was Knots.
No, it's Bobby Ewing.
Oh, it's Bobby. That's right. That's right.
Bobby comes out of the shower, and that whole season was like
that's right. Oh, that's right. You're so right. I totally forgot.
And it kind of felt that way, and I kind of, you know, I can understand going to 1970s, going back with they
had to go back because
they had to go back, but it would have been kind of good that they had to stop the curse from happening. It was like, well, we went there, saw the curse.
Yeah.
Escaped it, came back. Curse is never going to happen anyway, so why bother? So I mean, maybe they were an alternative timeline or something like that. But I kind of wanted, like, now we're going to see the lead up to how this got, you know, and how they're going to prevent this from happening. And it would have been quite nice if they had a bit of carry through. But it just felt like a special, like 2 weeks to talk to Dark Shadows. We're gonna do a special storyline, and then we're going right back to where we started. You know.
Well, I think in order to have to watch it properly, because what I did was to watch the episode before they went into 1995, when they were still in parallel time, 1970, and Timothy Stokes, which was the counterpart to Professor. Right. Set fire with Roxanne in it, and you get, I think, a lot more in terms of the intro into what 1995 is about, and then also where they finally end up in 1970, and they meet Hallie Stokes, and Quentin and Elizabeth are going over the postman with Barnabas and stuff, like Barnabas and Julia, who is still wearing that green
outfit,
that green horrible coat.
I know someone needs to change her damn clothes. I mean, I was just like, I guess showering and hygiene is just not a thing in the realm of Dark Shadows. Well, especially when we're time hopping, it's just like you know, they did need to change her clothes. I mean, that green. I know that was that time, but that green of that era. I mean, they used to paint the walls that color sometimes. I mean, change the dress. But I mean, that was the one thing that did kind of bother.
If she's going to end up being in 1970s, good thing they didn't show her in the kitchen because she would just blend in with the fixtures. All the avocado green.
Yeah, and the sunflowers. Don't forget the sunflowers they used to have up back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what they done, and I liked it, but I kind of, you know, but this is the trouble with time hopping. No matter what you're watching, whether it's Terminator or just, you know, when you do start time hopping and stuff like this, I think it's really hard to keep the strings tied, because, you know, if you're going to change, before, like, for instance, you know.
Do you think they switched gears? Do you think Curtis switched gears in this? Because they don't really talk about it anywhere, how this kind of did end abruptly. Do you think he just switched gears and decided to pursue another story?
I think I have a feeling that, and you get this with series, you know, when you watch series who would have been on for a period of time, they kind of get this thing where, well, this brought ratings up, so let's do this again.
Yeah, I can see where that might happen.
And even though I think Dark Shadows is still doing okay, but at the same time, I think they're kind of they were kind of meandering there towards the end, I think. I mean, the performances were good.
Continuity was a little broken up. It was.
Well, but I also think that what you got, well, I mean, I don't think they had a show Bible at all. Because normally, like, if you do a TV show, you do a Bible for the show.
They did originally, but then they abandoned it. And then they just
and so, you know, and then
really, he did have
when
one.
the writers left,
they did.
The writers left, and the new ones are coming in, and you know, and I don't think there is a bridge to carry them through because, you know, you got to remember, if you're a writer for a soap opera, that's a hell of a lot of writing. You know, that's 5 scripts a week, 30 things, and then you have, the person overseeing it and stuff like this, and it's tiring. They would go in, the writers would go in about 5 a.m. from I know other soap operas, and I imagine the same thing back in the Dark Shadow. Come in at 5 a.m. and work until 8, 9 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday, and then that's
what they said.
And meanwhile, they're rewriting everything at the same time as they're doing their read through and stuff like that. Okay, this needs to be rewritten and and they're doing that on the set, and and it's tiring work. I mean, think about it, doing that for a couple years, and then coming out, and sometimes you had to come in on Saturdays and Sundays because something doesn't quite work.
That's right.
And they didn't have Skype or anything like that. You had to go into the office and and do it around the table.
They didn't even have pagers back then. It's like, God, there's no technology.
But the thing about soap operas is that if you write for a soap opera and you do quite well, and you get noticed, you end up having a lengthy career afterwards.
True.
Because soap opera is kind of like boot camp for script writers.
Well, that's what happened to the Clarice Blackburn, the Mrs. Johnson. She went from there and to be a writer for All My Children and One Life to Live, and she had a pretty successful career as a writer, and I think she even got an Emmy for it. So so she was. And her performance was rather remarkable in this block as well, because she was brushing Carolyn's hair and then frightened to death by Gerard, and that was a counterpoint. But I'll tell you, the bottom line in this whole thing, and it's even better than Fred, because Fred was pretty actually decent with his lines. There wasn't a lot of Fred speak. There was a couple of Klieg lights if you look very hard by the old house window or stuff like that. But the bottom line, I gotta hand it to Nancy Barrett. She really took the show.
Yeah.
And I'll say that over and over again. It was, I think, the scariest role she ever did. I mean, you can just imagine having a nightmare about her coming to you and starting to laugh and stuff like that. And it's just it's a hoot.
The thing about Nancy Barrett, what is quite interesting about her is that when she starts off as Carolyn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, God, what a pain in the arse. But as soon as they start putting in the timelines and all the other things, then you realize, oh my God, she's actually bloody brilliant, actually. And,
We figured that out when she had to do that Cockney accent and when she was doing her songs, I want to
Pansy Faye.
Yeah. I mean, she was really quite talented.
Yeah. And the thing is like, if they never did that time jump, I don't think we would ever seen her. She would just been the bratty teenage daughter or 20-something daughter.
I loved her when she was
I
the
mean,
brat
she
daughter.
treated like, I mean, because at the beginning she treated like she's, I don't know, she's treated like a 16-year-old, but I mean, I don't know if she's in her 20s or what her age is supposed to be as Carolyn.
Well, but in other time bands, I mean, in 1795 she was Millicent. She was Charity Trask in 1897.
She was the crazy
Pansy
person there for a while.
possessed her. Then, of course, later on she becomes Letitia Faye, which is her ancestor. But the sets were really creepy, and thank goodness Barnabas found the coffin, because he was searching for a home at one point. I only wish that the caretaker had lived to come and make a guest appearance on the show 25 years later and start saying, "Evil, evil lurks here, evil." My favorite.
I mean, I have to sit there and say that Jonathan Frid's guy liner was
Guy liner.
so thick as normal.
Hey, they were fighting for the teleprompter, him and Julia, a couple times. If you noticed that when they were in the wreckage of Collins, they're all like, trying to get into the teleprompter.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
love when they fight for the teleprompter, especially him and Louis Edmonds. That used to just kill me.
I think also, I mean, I don't think Dan Curtis is very good at multitasking.
I agree.
Because when you see his focus was on Dark Shadows, we kind of highlight. But now his focus is elsewhere. I mean, this is when he started doing the TV movies of like Jekyll and Hyde, and of course Frankenstein a few years later, and so on and so forth. And he was doing all his television movies, and I think I can tell that you don't have the ringleader of the circus holding everything together. I think sometimes, and sometimes it did meander a little bit, but I thought this was really good. I think I kind of wanted a bit more
substance.
I don't know. It's just kind of like it just felt like a dream sequence. Like when they went back in time, it's like, okay, well, this never happened, and let's forget about it and move forward. And the thing is, it's kind of sad because this is when you do watch these 10 episodes, they're interesting. They're it piqued your interest. Slightly before that, I noticed when I was watching the episodes, back in a few years ago, that my mind used to wander a little bit up into this storyline, and all of a sudden it's like I was piqued. It's like, okay, I'm invested now again, because I find you drips and drabs through Dark Shadows, and now I'm like interested. And it's like, oh, it's over. Is that it? Okay. I mean, it's kind of like a big build up, and then it's like, poof, it's over. You know what I mean? And then but
it's just over all too soon. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just kind of would like, follow up. It's like, they could have. And I said before, I think they could have, ideally, it's like, okay, they go back to 1970s. And it's like, okay, well, this house is going to be in ruins in 1970s. It's going to happen in the present or in the next few months. So how's this curse gonna, how do we stop this from happening? And that would have been quite nice.
I think it's really cool what they do here. When I first watched Dark Shadows and I first watched this as a George A. Romero fan, even though I know George A. Romero had nothing to do with Dark Shadows, I see a lot of George A. Romero in this, because George A. Romero and John Carpenter at times were about doom is imminent. This is Dark Shadows as the world. The DS world is ending. Doom is in. It's not imminent. It's here. It's happened. And they make you feel powerless to do anything. What I love most is what this sets up. Julia and Barnabas know the stakes going back. They know, they've seen the worst possible outcome ever, and now they have to stop it. And in 1970, they don't. They have to now go back to 1840 to rectify it all. Right. I think 1995 is the official start of the journey to 1840. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really well done from a scare standpoint. You see an older Carolyn, you see an older Mrs. Johnson, you see a broken down Elliot Stokes, and you have never seen
Yes.
that in the series. And it was amazing to see Thayer David put on that broken character performance that he
It was so unlike what
Yeah.
you normally got from him. It wasn't strong man stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something different. I think that's what the writers did so well, is popping out something different here. Because really, the Dark Shadows world, Collinwood was our world. Really, we had stopped really going to town and the Blue Whale for the most point.
Yeah.
We were at either A, the old house, or B, Collinwood. So what was our world? Our world was the houses. So when the great house is destroyed, our world is destroyed. It's gone. So you're giving that sort of Ramiro
That's
vibe.
a good way of looking at it. I never thought of that before, but that is a really good way of looking at it.
Right. You're giving that Ramiro vibe of, hey, your world, it's done. You can't do nothing about it. It gives you that helpless feeling. Is that even when I went back and watched it today, I'm thinking, God, I feel so goddamn helpless.
It is kind of sad because after 1,000 episodes, these guys are like your friends.
Yeah,
it's like soap operas. I mean, they just reel you in and get you involved, invested in the characters. And I mean, they do that with Dark Shadows like none other. You really are wanting to know, are they okay?
Yeah. And you really see Barnabas too. I keep thinking about when something he said in 1970. I won't let fate determine my path any longer. I'm gonna take control of my life. He is literally taking control by the end of that and go into 1995.
Right.
He's willing to take on all comers by that point. He's not afraid of the ghost. He
takes betrayal better too, because Julia betrays him and he doesn't fang her or choke her or anything. He actually loves Julia. You actually see how much he really cares about his friend. I mean, he really does love her. And you really notice it up until this point.
That's a good point, Vickie, because I was going to say that the tenderness between the two of them are really accentuated.
They love each other, not in the physical, like the Josette way, but they care about each other.
But they love each other as friends. And even after Gerard made Julia betray him, and usually when Barnabas said, "You betrayed me," that's
usually there's a hand that comes out.
Happened. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. But he didn't choke her, and he wound up, and he wound up understanding, and he came to his own conclusion that Gerard had possessed Julia, and which is good. I mean, because he knows his friend. He knows this is something she would not normally do under any other circumstances, and he put two and two together, and he saw that she was smiling inappropriately. It kind of reminded me in a way of Julia's fascination with Tom Jennings when he was putting the bite on her, and she was, "Oh, Tom," that kind of thing. So it was Gerard kind of. It was kind of a crossover to Gerard, I think, kind of. But the bottom line was that there were a number of surprise elements during that block and they could have done a lot worse with that block. And there were a number of surprise elements in Quentin. Oh, of course. I mean, David Selby hanging on to, that was brilliant, where he just hung on to the staircase and talked like he was behind bars. And it was just a very, very poignant. It was a very poignant message that everybody's crazy if this is what happens to Collinwood.
Basically, it exploded, but everybody went mad all at once. But we never really did. We ever actually find out why everybody went mad? I mean, I'm sitting here racking my brain. What did I miss? Did I miss something? Because there's really not a whole lot of explanation. We just move into the next storyline.
Yeah, I think
that happens in 1970 when you find out, when they come back to 1970.
And it plays out. Yeah.
And it plays out. And Quentin's
That's true, it does. But it's so vague, though.
I mean, another thing. I mean, Dark Shadows does have restrictions put on it to a certain extent. Because, as a storyline, let's say a storyline goes on and then they go back to the present. The problem basically is that a lot of characters in the present are no longer with Dark Shadows because they've left.
True.
So it's kind of like, oh.
Yeah, Mitchell Ryan had gone by now. That a lot of them had flown the coop. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like, luckily Maggie left in the 70s when we see her drive off and never come back. At least that was in the 70s. But I mean, if you look at the original time flip, by the time they got back to modern time, some of the characters have left Dark Shadows. They've moved on to other shows or whatever, so
movie careers, yeah.
I mean, one good thing I can say that with the love of Barnabas with Julia and so on is probably the first time we saw age appropriate relationship.
Yeah, but
there wasn't no daddy figures walking around for the young girls.
But I think that's the way it was back then, though. I think it was just the whole dichotomy of a different culture. I mean, it was a different time.
I think basically what it basically was is like, I kind of look at Dark Shadows as like Orson Welles theater group. You know what I mean? And they're like, they're a troupe and they're putting on a show and these are our actors, these are a group of actors and, they're going to be doing this and that's,
it's a repertory group, sure.
And that, the thing is like, whether it was Caroline in love with, Burke, Victoria in love with Burke.
Vickie. Yeah.
And Vickie and so on and so forth. It's kind of like, but at the same time, there was no young guys cast either.
Mm.
The young guys
wasn't.
You had David who was 10.
Their 30s.
And then you had, supposed to be. We had David who was 10. And then the next male in line, I think, is in his 30s, 30s or 40s.
You had Don Crabtree and Cliff Cuddly. And Cliff, what a name! And Cliff Cuddly was one of the guards in the 1795 hanging sequence, I believe, with Vickie.
When he liked a red shirt, didn't he get it? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always a couple red shirts.
But then, of course, then by this time your heartthrobs have now come in. And then they start doing heartthrobs, and like David Selby and who is the one who
Jim Storm was kind of a heartthrob.
Jim Storm and the werewolf guy. I forgot his name.
Don Briscoe.
We had the heartthrob.
He was really good looking. I mean, he was like serious eye candy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it when they had him play his brother, but when he was, Don Briscoe, when he was like the nice guy. Yeah. I liked it. He was so
you
cute.
Can't have a soap opera without twins.
Yeah,
I know, twins or baby exchange or whatever.
They had a great dream back then where they had the werewolf Chris right next to the vampire Don, and that was a brilliant piece of work. I thought. And there's still interest to this day regarding what happened with Don, but that's another story.
Right, very sad one.
I mean, they've done a good job with David,
because
with the minion.
They always made sure that he, because unfortunately, between the ages of 10 and 16, are we talking here? There's a lot of, maturity and spurts and everything that goes on for a regular child between those ages, and been able to keep him consistently, growing forward, and even in the different characters to make sure that, you have him age appropriately. Situation.
Was Sam Hall writing these episodes? He wrote these episodes, did he not?
Joe Crawford, what's his name? Joe Crawford.
Oh, Gordon Russell. Maybe.
No, not Russell. I know that Crawford wrote a few of the episodes. You don't know because a lot of the credits were kind of cut out at the end, and all you saw was either the actors and then the Dan Curtis productions. But you know what I'm talking about, Jewel Crawford. He was one of the.
Well, for Joe Crawford for 1061.
Oh, Caldwell. Joe Caldwell.
Yes.
Joe Caldwell. Yeah.
Okay.
Joe Caldwell wrote some of these episodes, and he was from a long time back when so he had some experience in the original Dark Shadows. He was one of the first few writers to take over, and I guess they got him out of wherever they did because they didn't intend to keep them in 1995 too long.
No.
It was kind of like an intermission, so to speak. And it's a good point that Jewel raises. It's the beginning of it's kind of like a trilogy. 1995 as a prelude, and then it's 1970, and then finally 1840.
Yeah, I love how when I was watching The Untouchables, and Connery's character tells what the other guy's character, "What are you prepared to do?" I keep thinking about that with 1995 and Dark Shadows. It's like, to Barnabas, what are you prepared to do to stop this?
Right.
Because that's the stakes. If you fail, this happens.
Right.
He's a vampire in this timeline, though, isn't he? Because they open the casket, but
Yes,
after
he
they
is.
open the casket, and the police officer is like, Barnabas.
Yes,
He
he
doesn't really act like a vampire after that, so you kind of lose sight. Is Barnabas still a vampire?
Yeah, he only does what he needs to do.
I
when
mean,
he kills off the sheriff.
How long are they there for the 2 weeks? I mean, the 2-week program, are they for their 24 hours? Is it a 24-hour time span? Or are they there? The
That's
house
a good
is ruined.
question.
I mean, the sunlight's going to get. It's going to be very hard for it to get away from the sun, isn't it?
They apparently came back. You see, in the first episode, that's why you got to see the first episode where they've actually come back to 1970, and they're talking with Quentin and Julia about it, and Quentin realizes that this is August 3rd, that he mentions the date, and that's the date that the fire occurred. So although they spent 2 weeks or maybe even a month, I think they tried to stretch it to say it was a month in 95, when they came back to Collinwood, they came back to the same day as the fire.
Gotcha.
And so that's where that was.
How long are they in 1995 though? Is it a week or is it a day?
Well, it can't be too long because they've had the same clothes on for like 2 or 3 days. I want to say.
Yeah, but you can't go by the change of clothes. I mean.
But I mean, but judging from Julia's appearance, I would say 2 days.
For the first 2 years of Dark Shadows is in the same dress, and I'm sure that was over a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm a girl, and I notice that shit. Okay, it's a pet peeve. Okay.
I kind of wish that when they went to 1995 that they had like Land of the Giant outfits on, because that was supposed because in the Land of the Giants didn't they get lost in like 1983?
Yeah, I used to love that show. Don't knock Land of the Giants. That was one of my
favorites. It would have been really like groovy if they had like 1995 had like this like kind of science fiction-y kind of feel to it.
Talk about that.
They showed outside of Collinwood.
My favorite is the Time Tunnel, and I would have liked to have seen Tony and Doug materialize in 1995. And the general gets Barnabas back into the Time Tunnel, and he starts biting everybody. And that would be be funny.
Pretty ingenuitive of them, though. I mean, these were good stories. I mean, they were good stories. It has not been replicated. They've tried, but I mean, I remember General Hospital had Port Charles. And they tried to replicate the vampire stuff and everything else, and it failed miserably. Jewel, you know what I'm talking about, probably, maybe. It failed miserably.
Well, Sunset Beach tried to do some Dark Shadow stuff. And wasn't there another soap opera that kind of gave it
Strange Paradise.
Strange Paradise.
Strange Paradise. Yeah. The Canadian soap. It
And then
didn't
you have
last.
the gay soap opera that was on gay TV called Dark Cove. They did the whole.
Oh, that's right.
That was a nod to Dark Shadows and
It
stuff
was
like
kind I really liked that though. I thought that was kind of good. I forgot all about
that.
that.
You just probably like the male nudity in it, so.
Yeah, full frontal always works for me. I was just I was just watching the new Nosferatu and he got full frontal
Yes.
Nosferatu. It's like yes.
Good job. Good
So
movie.
what? Nosferatu is
Good
no
movie.
longer a Ken doll.
Well,
Great movie.
you couldn't help but notice it was right there.
I haven't seen the new one.
Great movie.
Yeah, I'm halfway through it. I got to finish watching it. It was creeping me the fuck out, and I'm here alone tonight. And nothing really creeps me out like that, but that was kind of getting to me a little bit. It's good. It's really good.
Hey, just on the change of subject, did they finally come out with the unedited version of Night of Dark Shadows? Because I heard they were working on that too.
There's an unedited version coming out.
Yeah, I remember when we interviewed what's his name. Sorry, I turned 60.
Storm.
No.
Oh no.
No.
Going.
Pete, whatever. The guy who was trying to. Oh, you're talking about Ansel?
Oh,
Ansel.
Yeah, Ansel.
It was
okay.
Ansel that was doing it.
Yeah.
That was 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. So he was talking about that.
Yeah.
God, I can't remember that. I've since
Kind of
slept.
weird, but yeah.
God, time has been marching. Oh my God.
Yeah. But I mean, I think I think it's a very interesting block.
Yeah.
And and it did leave me wanting more. So that was kind
Yeah, I would have liked a little more closure, so to speak.
Yeah.
I would like them to stay in it a little longer and and see if they could have found Roger was allegedly in Europe or whatever the hell he was doing, and
I would have liked to have seen more Roger. Yeah, we definitely needed some more Roger in this because I just
old Roger, that would have been fun.
Yeah.
But they did what they did, and they only had, let's see, there was Fred, Julia. They only had 5 or 6 actors. Carolyn and the two.
Oh yeah, Daphne, Tad Collins, Carrie
Oh, of
Stokes,
course.
Styles.
Well,
Don't forget Tad.
You can't forget that
It's called Stairway. I don't. But is this the Stairway in Time? I think they call it the Stairway in Time.
Yeah,
that's a Stairway.
That's how they get back to 1970.
Right.
You can't forget that Kate Jackson made her debut during the 1995 arc.
I would have loved to have interviewed her. She stopped giving interviews. We tried. God, it would have been great.
Well, I think she had given a few of them, but I think she was more interested in her current career, and she wanted to post. But I've seen a couple of the ones she's done on YouTube, and she was grateful that Shadows gave her start right out of the Academy.
Well, they all were.
Yeah,
a lot of those actors were so much more than just Dark Shadows, though. They had.
Well, they were Broadway. They were on Broadway, but this was her first job out of acting.
Yeah, she was just a kid, really.
And she went into that after she left Dark Shadows. She went into the Rookies, wasn't it?
Yeah, was the Rookie first?
Rookies, then Charlie's Angels.
I was trying to remember.
And Scarecrow and Mrs. King, which I have to watch one day because I heard about it.
I love Scarecrow, Mrs. King. It's on Tubi. I know it's there too now.
And she also got, she was quite lucky to come in at the time that she did, because then they did Night of Dark Shadows and she had a role in that.
Yeah, she did. She lucked out with that.
She talks about the idea of being able to use everything they taught her in the academy in a show like this, because for 5 weeks she didn't speak as a ghost. So she was just.
That was like a schematic with him, and like 3 or 4 actors just didn't say shit for like how many weeks? I think David Selby said it was like almost like 6 to 8 weeks before they let him talk.
The same thing. Yeah, the same thing.
Jim Storm saying. Yeah.
The same thing even with Beth. Remember when Quentin first appeared in Beth and they didn't talk? Neither of them talked for a while. So that was essentially the plan. Bring them back as ghosts who didn't talk, and then put them into another time band where they were alive and they did. So that seems to be
That was when they started with their innocence kind of kind of story. Was that before? That was before The Innocent, wasn't it? With the two kids, they were doing the.
That's Rosewood Cottage.
Was it Rosewood? Rose
Yeah.
Cottage. Okay,
Rose Cottage. Rose Cottage.
Yeah, that's what I said, because these last few storylines, except for 1840s, because we all know how that ended, just kind of collide, and I kind of get confused sometimes. Kind of keep my universe straight.
And this is after they tried to do Lovecraft storyline, wasn't it?
Leviathan.
That was the
Yeah,
Leviathan.
this is after that. Yeah.
Some people like Leviathan.
Everybody shits all over that story.
I like Leviathan, actually, but I think it was. I think in 1960s, late 60s. I mean, I think the only people who were really into H.P. Lovecraft were probably hippies and things like that.
Probably.
And but you know what I mean? Because I mean, because Lovecraft started making a comeback in like the 60s, and then now of course we know who he is thanks to that. And so I think the reason why we enjoy it is because we know who Lovecraft is, and we like that Lovecraft storyline. So when we're rewatching that, we have an appreciation for it.
A little more body.
But I think it was a bit ahead of its time for the time that it aired.
It was definitely ahead of its time.
I can't picture my mom knowing about Lovecraft.
I don't think
they knew about Poe and the classic the classic monsters and the vampires and the werewolves and so on and so forth and the witches but when it came to Lovecraft, I mean, Lovecraft is there's it's unless you have an understanding of it, you don't have an appreciation of it.
I think you'd have to look at the writers who did the Lovecraft art and see whether they themselves had a background in reading Lovecraft. All I knew was they gave Barnabas gray hair and made an evil guy out of him, and I was not happy. I was not happy with that.
They did turn him into a bit of a butt, didn't they?
Yeah, they sure did.
Yeah, but that's what I quite liked because unfortunately, when it came to Jonathan Frid's character, his character was the same all the way through. He never got to change any character. He never got to do anything different. It was always Barnabas.
Well, this is why he had the big fight with Curtis, because Curtis wanted him to be in the Night of Dark Shadows, resurrecting Barnabas and all the blood and gore that you saw in the House of Dark Shadows, and he refused to do it. And Curtis had Dark Shadows gone on. Curtis was going to fire him and write him out of the script. And it's a well-known fact now, because years ago it wasn't. But then the show was going to be canceled. They said, what the hell? So they kept him on for the last, they kept him on for the parallel time, 1841, which, again, wasn't, I missed Barnabas. I think that's what got him. I think that's what got people attracted to the show. And Bramwell, I don't know what you guys think about Bramwell, but he was a poor reflection, really, of what Barnabas had been. Although I did kind of like him, but we're straying from the point. The point is that 1995, and I think we've established that, had a good beginning. You can almost think of it as a trilogy, 1995 to 1970 to 1840.
Yeah, they do a really good job piecing it together.
Sorry?
I said they do a really great job piecing 1995, 1970, and 1840 together. For the conclusion of Dark Shadows, you really have a perfect simile of events. You have 1995, you have the ruin, they're setting up the stakes. This is your stakes. You have to succeed. You succeed because if you fail, what's at the other end of it now.
Exactly. It was kind of a sad thing. Now looking back on it, I know what's coming. It's just like, wow, shit, this is like almost the end, because they're setting you up for the end. Which the end is like, I've still never reconciled with that last couple of episodes.
But to be honest, I mean, if Jonathan Frid ever decided to leave, that would have been the end of Dark Shadows anyway.
It probably, well, they might have hung on, but it would have been
I mean,
hard.
I mean,
They would have put it all over David
but
Selby.
the problem with genre shows basically is that you do run out of ideas. Whether it's X-Files, whether it's Supernatural, whether it's, you know, Sabrina, whether it's, if you look at any genre show, after about 3 or 4 years, is like it's all of a sudden now we're retreading, and they were quite well to keep it as original and fresh as they did. But you can see there is some retreading that they end up doing because, you know, when you do a genre show, you're kind of it's a great thing to do, but you're also kind of boxing yourself in a little bit.
Yeah.
And you know, and they kept themselves they kept trying to come out of the box and keep it up. And you know, and unfortunately when they did try something else, you know, some of the fans weren't happy. And you know, the Leviathan thing, you know, they go, well, let's try it, let's try this, and this will give us a different, you know,
They
kind
never
of
really
outwear.
totally painted themselves into a corner. I mean, they evolved as they saw fit. I mean,
You know, they did evolve, but the thing is that when you're using with genre and stuff like this, okay, if you take it like a normal soap opera, for instance, let's just take General Hospital. You can do the Luke and Laura thing for just so long situation.
Yeah.
But the thing
Super
is, you can always bring other love routine, love interest going on, and adultery and all the other stuff, because that's what soap operas are, is about adultery and, you know, and family secrets, so on and so forth. But when you're dealing with genre and you're dealing with supernatural and werewolves and witches and so on and so forth, Frankenstein and so on, you do reach the point where it's like, we've covered this already. And I know, and it's like, you know, let's sit there and say that they decide to bring another werewolf in, or another vampire in, or another witch in. It's like, how do we do this without making it seem like we've already done this? See, and you know, and the time hopping did help, you know, with the different ghosts and stuff like that. That did help. But, you know, there are, you know, through the span of Dark Shadows, and I'm not poo-pooing Dark Shadows at all. I think they did fantastic with the limitations that they had. But at the same time, you know, they did a little bit of repeating a little bit, you know, and I do think that, you know, but you know, I do think that Barnabas and Julia are the forecomers of Night Stalker, because there's like, you know, it's like Barnabas and Julia. What
that
mystery
is
around
a
the
good
creek?
point.
It's like, we're gonna
It is.
solve
I
our
never
mystery.
thought of that.
We're gonna solve the supernatural mystery, which will later become the Night Stalker. You know what I mean? With Darren McGavin. You know, which actually, if it wasn't for Night Stalker, you wouldn't have X-Files. So it's kind of like, you know, you can see kind of the bridges that come across. And Dark Shadows, I mean, is very influential. I mean, it's an influential series because, you know, it did, you know, if you look at a lot of 80s horror and stuff like this, those directors and writers were fans of Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
You know,
they definitely blazed. Dan Curtis definitely blazed some trails. No doubt about that.
I was a huge fan of that, and he would go on to do the Reanimator and Bride of the Reanimator and From Beyond and so on and so forth. But it was the Leviathan storyline that got him into H.P. Lovecraft, you know. And quite interesting going back to H.P. Lovecraft and Night of Dark Shadows. I mean, it's kind of funny that Night of Dark Shadows is a lot like Lovecraft's Dream of a Witch's House.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities in that storyline. But yeah, so, you know, and if you consider that, you know, their budget was getting cut as well, as, you know, if your ratings are not at the peak, your budget starts getting cut as well. So, you know, and they were scrambling, but at the same time, it didn't feel like they were scrambling. You know, you kind of rewatch some of it now, and you're thinking, okay, well, you know, when a storyline goes long, you can tell that they kind of they're trying to write themselves out of a corner sometimes. And but you know, I think they've done a pretty good job, because let's take multi-million franchise. Let's take the Terminator series.
Right.
And you know, that's time traveling. That's time jumping. You know, that's bringing a person from the future who wasn't even born yet to pregnant the savior of our world, you know, situation. And as that series goes on, they caught themselves in trouble. You know, and now they're like not they're not able to write themselves out of this. Or if you look at a 90-minute to a 2-hour a movie, whether it's television or a film, and it's about time travel, they write themselves in a corner within that 2 hours situation where it starts not making sense. Where Dark Shadows, it does make sense. So they were able to do that without losing that. You know, but there are times that you do see them write themselves slightly in a corner, but they do write themselves out of it and quite as well.
Had Dark Shadows gone on, I would have liked to have seen that parallel time room open into a multiverse where you could go into yet again a third time band where maybe Barnabas meets himself and as a normal, maybe Barnabas and Julia are married, and it was.
I would have really have liked to have seen that. I mean, because she was actually in love with him in the beginning of everything, you know.
Still was. She's all along. And
I would have liked to have seen that time hop where Julia gets her dream, you know, and Barnabas reciprocates the feelings and stuff because she deserved it. I mean, shit, she was there for him for everything. I mean, you want to talk My Girl Friday. I mean, that bitch just throws down for him all the time. I mean, it doesn't matter. And she takes the sideline, you know. I mean, he's chasing Josette all over the place, or Roxanne, or whoever the virgin.
She gets people with her purse.
Barnabas goes from teenager to middle-aged woman. But I mean, the thing is, I mean, I think if they ever if they ever did Dark Shadows or did a reinvention of it, I think like if you like see the 1991 series, and though it's very, very interesting and it's well done, a great cast, some of this, but unfortunately, I mean, we are rehashing the same, that storyline.
Story, yeah,
if they do bring it back, I would hope that they would do something else.
They got these other books and novels going that some of the other, I mean, there's all kinds of storylines.
I don't need to see the Barnabas storyline and flashing back to 1870s.
I
saw that in the original series, saw that in 1991. And it's not like watching a Batman movie every time you reboot it. It's like, okay, here we go. Batman's parents have been murdered again. Here we go.
Yeah.
And we know this story now. You don't need to repeat it. Everyone knows this story now.
And they do repeat it almost every Batman movie too.
I'll say this: I've seen Batman's parents murdered more than I've seen Judith Margaret Myers murdered.
Seriously, it's true. I mean, what was that last one? I didn't even realize that was it was Walking Dead and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I mean, and I was like, oh my God, is that Maggie and Negan? It's like, sure as shit. Yeah, it was. That freaked me out. I liked that though. That was a nice little touch though. Yeah. That was good.
So yeah, I mean, if they ever do a reinvention of Dark Shadows, I think they're gonna. I think now that Dan Curtis is passed on, if they ever just get off the ground, I think they could do something quite very, very interesting with it without. I mean, let's face it. If they gave it a Planet of the Apes remake, like Rise of the Planet of the Apes and the new Planet of the Apes series with a whole new vision, but still giving your nods to the original, it could be a fantastic situation. But if they're going to retread old water, it's like...
Well, you remember they tried bringing it back in 91, and that was supposed to be Dark Shadows with all the money that Curtis had that he couldn't have spent during the original run. And had it not been for the Gulf War, because it appeared that the first 2 episodes, 3 out of 4 households were watching it, and then the Gulf War. And I was watching it, and then the Gulf War took over, and then you didn't see these damn things until 2 in the morning, and that killed it. And NBC
it also killed Twin Peaks as well, didn't it? So
pretty much
made a big mistake. They admitted it. They admitted they made a mistake, but that was much later.
But I think But I mean, I did enjoy it. I mean, it was a bit budget. I mean, Gene Simmons, Barbara Steele, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's a kid who would actually go on to bigger and better things now that he's an adult, even though he can be a bit of a prick sometimes. And you know,
Roy
the
Fiennes,
younger
that's the only one I
Barnabas.
didn't like.
Ben Cross was Ben Cross.
Ben Cross is
Ben Cross
Barnabas.
and Barnabas.
He was a sexy
Lynette
Barnabas too.
Anthony
I mean,
was
he's not really like handsome, but he was a sexy Barnabas. He really.
He had
I
that-
mean, when
had
he
that-
was biting Daphne, it's just like, oh yeah, I'll have some of that.
He had that whole,
really sensual.
he had that whole
Like,
British
you know?
thing, didn't he? I mean, it's that whole British thing that he had going for him.
Yeah, well,
I mean, he could have played James Bond. I mean,
he could have.
Oh, definitely.
You know?
He would have
And it's
made
very
good
interesting. I mean, and the worst thing about it is like, just as it's getting good, and then you get to the point where it's like, okay, we're kind of like seeing the first 2 years being sped up.
Right, 8 episodes. They hang the nanny, and Joanna Going is still like, what the fuck? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's 13 episodes.
Was it 13?
13, yeah.
Yeah, and then it ends with Angelique coming out of the fire. It's like, whoa! It's like, and then it's like, bing. It's like, okay.
And that was it. That's all she wrote.
Yeah, she's in Maggie Evans's body. It's like, Jesus.
I know, and she was such a good. She was really good at it too.
Even Joanne
She was
Going
so-
was really attractive. I mean, she kind of reminded me of Jamie Getz.
Yeah, she does, doesn't she? I used to often get the two of them confused sometimes because they look
think she was
just
sexier,
like
though.
each other.
I think Joanna Going was sexier than Jamie.
She does a great job in the movie Wyatt Earp as well. Joanna.
Yes. Yeah.
Movie.
I forgot she was in that.
Well,
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys want to add before we go?
No, I mean the only thing I kind of wish is that 1995 had the people living in 1995 had an interesting look instead of a 1960s look. That's the only gripe I really have, really.
Well, they tried.
It would have been funny
how
what they
could you
would have thought
possibly
fashion would have looked like
imagine
in 1995.
1995 back
What?
then? I mean, I couldn't remember how we imagined the year 2000 when we
Well,
were
we're
kids.
supposed to
We thought it was
find-
going to be the fucking Jetsons, okay?
Sure, sure.
But it would just been like, it just kind of like it's. I mean, because if you're watching at the time, you'd probably think, oh, okay, well, this is quite interesting. But watching it now, it kind of would bring a smile to your face. Like Land of the Giants, like what they're wearing, or Time Tunnel, what they're wearing. It's it would just been like, oh, that's kind of funny.
And in Time Tunnel, they wore the same episode. They wore the same clothes every episode.
Yeah, but even when
Don't think I did not notice. I did. I
Well, they-
noticed.
they didn't even try to blend in when they went back in time.
Tony with that turtleneck.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Victoria shows up in a 60s dress, and in puritanical Massachusetts,
Yeah, but they did mention it. They go, look at her strange clothing. Oh,
Her straight, I know, and it's really strange.
Permanent press.
She's half dressed for the time, and nobody's like aghast. I mean,
How many polyesters they murdered for this dress?
I love that. That was a cute little a comedic thing in the 91 Shadows when who was it? It was the Abigail character that was catching her, and she said, and she wore this clothing with said permanent press. Yeah.
and because also they go, look at the tag, it has witching markings on it because it had
that's
the
right,
iron.
That's
right.
right. That's right. That's right. That was really
What's
good.
what's this 30 mean on here?
That was really good. The only thing I wish it would have had the Joshua turned into a cat. That would have been fun. That would have been fun.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
No.
Remember that? Yeah, the cat. She was cracking up, Alexander Moltke, because the cat just jumped off the table and off the set.
I think Victoria
Yeah,
Winters
they
is from
just start
China
thinking
because of
about
clothes they
they
made
really
in China.
Yeah. They pursued a lot of weird shit, though, when you think back. Just the cat. The cat was somebody. I forgot about the cat. Oh, my
That
God.
was Joshua.
Yeah.
And Julie did a number on him. Yeah.
Or they get the tattoos. If they get the tattoos, they go insane with lust. Like the whole
Oh
time.
yeah.
I mean,
The hexagram or the pentagram or whatever the heck it was.
Yeah. It's like a pitchfork is what it looks like.
I mean,
And
I
they
love
start
the
sucking face like
Dark
crazy.
Shadows with David's mom. You know, the
Phoenix.
I love the
Phoenix,
Phoenix story. And unfortunately, that is so overlooked.
She was just wonderful. She was pregnant through that whole thing, too.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But
Well,
yeah, but I haven't really got nothing more.
No,
I think it's good 10 episodes.
Yeah. When could you guys come back? I'd love to bring you guys back.
Whenever you want us.
Is Saturday the 1st good?
Yeah, what are we doing?
I'd like you. Well, for a fun topic, because obviously Mark B. Perry is still working on that. His Dark Shadows. Why don't we all pick who would you like to see in a new Dark Shadows and pick what you would like to see? That would be fun.
Who would I want? I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And what? Who
do
we
I feel like I just got
character we want to see, or the actors we would like to see portrayed them?
The actors you'd like to see portray them, and characters and different storylines you'd like to see.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be a lot of fun to discuss.
Substitute actors and stuff for storylines and
Yeah.
That sounds good.
It could be anybody I want.
Anybody.
Vickie, you could be in it.
I've got a really big imagination.
Vickie, you could be in it.
Yes.
Your brothers would like that, right? Yeah.
Maybe.
First of
I like
all,
the paycheck. I like the paycheck that came along with it.
I would love the paycheck. I'd be in it for that. Hell.
Oh my God! Here we go. I gave up drinking too.
I want to thank Tom Hotz. I want to thank
Hotz.
Hotz. Sorry. I want to thank Keith.
AKA Diamond. Don't forget about that. That's not
Tom Diamond. I want to thank Keith Chawgo. I want to thank Vickie Rae. Thank you all for giving me you guys this time tonight. This was a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
I'll see you guys Saturday. And link
Saturday the 1st. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yep, 10 o'clock. Link to the Literary License podcast will be in the description box. There'll be a bunch of links to that. Go check them out. You guys have a good night. Be safe.
Thanks, hon. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.